What if Noah's Ark was the original Punk'd?
Welcome back, everybody, to Something Interesting. I'm here. I'm Joe. This is my co-host. He's Antonio. Say hello.
Hello.
Last week,
Yep.
we talked about being born in space. We talked about whales and Boyle's Law. And we talked about whether or not you should make contact with aliens. Antonio,
Yes.
do you have anything to follow up with?
From last week, no. From a few episodes ago, yes.
Hit me with it.
I mistakenly said tobacco was a drug. Tobacco is not a drug.
Tobacco is, however,
Nicotine is a drug. Tobacco is wacko. You never want to smoke that wacky tobacco or just regular tobacco.
Nicotine's the drug. Though.
Yes, nicotine is the drug. As someone pointed out to me that I said tobacco is a drug. It is nicotine. I'm sorry if I caused confusion.
Very good.
Joe, do you have anything you'd like to add from last week?
I do, actually. So we talked about being born in space and like the effects that it has on your body.
Mm-hmm.
So in space, when you're an astronaut, they have you do a bunch of different workouts where it's like you're attached to a machine that's like pulling you down to it. That way your muscles don't atrophy and things.
Right.
So if you were born in space, you would never really develop the muscles that you need to be able to survive life on Earth. And then your body just like wouldn't form correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Like in the Vsauce video about this topic, he talked about how your body would form similarly to if you had rickets, where bones wouldn't be straight. Everything's just kind of off. Everything's wonky. The other thing that happens in space is your body's made so that blood is forced down towards your feet. So if you look at astronauts in space, their faces are usually kind of red and a little bit puffy, and it's because the blood isn't all being pulled down. It goes up into their head more.
Mm-hmm.
So
how do they combat that?
they don't. When they come back to Earth, it'll...
Okay.
Yeah. Like Scott Kelly and his twin brother, they did a comparative thing on because he spent a whole year in space. His brother did not. So it's like they have like comparisons throughout the time. Oh, hey. Didn't see you there.
Oh, hey.
So Antonio, quick question.
What's up?
Did you know that we're on iTunes and YouTube?
And Stitcher as well.
Wow. And you can subscribe to us in all of these places?
Amazing. Just a reminder, everybody, if you like this podcast, give us a follow, give us a rate. We'd really appreciate it. Also, if you want to find us on, let's say, Twitter, it's SI Podcast _ because we could not get SI Podcast.
Someone stole it from us.
Somebody stole it already. Don't listen to that podcast.
Antonio.
Yo.
I hear that you are one of the 7,585,213,217 people alive on Earth.
I can't believe you remember that number all yourself.
Yeah. So, are you going to be one of those people who have a child?
I think I will eventually.
Eventually?
Eventually. I'm sure I will, knowing myself.
If you were to have a child this year, you'd be one of the 53,605,000 people to have a child this year. So, the question here.
How many of those people are having multiple kids?
I don't know. I don't have that statistic.
Okay. That would be interesting to know.
We live in a day and an age where we've learned a lot of things, a lot of science.
Yes.
And
I think we live in a very science-literate world.
A technology that we have available to us is like genome sequencing companies, right? So you spit in a tube, send it out, you get it back. You go to their website. Well, you don't get your spit in a tube back. That's a lie.
That would be terrible.
They sequence your DNA. You go to their website. You can view all of the information they've gathered from looking at your DNA.
So, like, showing how much a percentage of where you've came from and
where you've come from. A thing that a lot of companies do is they show you what diseases you have, like, a predisposition for. And a lot of people don't want to see that. So they're like, hey, don't click on this part of the website if you don't want to know. So it's kind of up to your own discretion.
That would be so interesting, though, to like see what you're susceptible to.
That's what I think. I think if I planned on having a child with someone, I would do it and they would do it. And then we'd figure out whether or not we actually want to have a child.
Right. Well, I agree with that, though. Does it really matter? Are these diseases actually going to be super effective? Because you could be susceptible to some of these diseases, so to speak. But I feel like most of those aren't really going to ever affect you.
Well, like cystic fibrosis
Mm-hmm.
is a disease that babies are born with. Originally, the test after a baby was born, a nurse would kiss it. If it tasted salty, it had CF, cystic fibrosis. And it's because in your cells, it has a difficult time moving the chloride ions across the surface of cells. So it makes the baby taste salty because it can't move the chloride where it needs to go to.
And how could that affect the baby? Because I've heard cystic fibrosis, but I never really knew
So
exactly
what happens
it
is it typically in the lungs, it builds up like a bunch of mucus and stuff.
Okay.
So the baby can't breathe properly. And then it also happens in like different parts of the body too.
I think the genotyping would be a good idea, though I wouldn't do it for those specific reasons because I was going to have kids. I'd do it just because it's interesting.
I also agree that I would do it. I want to do it because it's interesting, but if I
like
planned on having kids and hadn't yet done it, I would do it.
They're like $120 though, right? It's something weird expensive.
There's like $100. I mean, it's not that expensive when you think about it. Do you know how many individual...
That's $100 coming out of my pocket.
They have to go through so many separate individual amino acids and tell you
$20
what
flat
they
rate.
all mean.
Anybody see? Here's the thing about business: is that you might need to take a loss at one point, but if you get so many people coming in, you're not taking a loss anymore.
They have to
lower
get
it down
there,
to
though.
$20.
No, that's too
and
low.
then everybody's gonna do it. You're making bank.
I'm glad that you're not going into business.
If I was going into the business, I'd probably learn that that's a terrible business scheme.
Yeah, but I would want to know what kind of diseases I could be passing on to my child. Because, like...
Is there any other way you could figure that out? Maybe by looking at...
You could look
past-
at your family
yeah,
tree,
past
yeah. So, at conception, the father determines the gender of the baby. He doesn't just like, hey, it's going to be a boy.
Male patriarchy at its finest.
No, at conception, the sperm carries either an X chromosome or a Y chromosome. So the egg cell will end up either with an X and an X or an X and a Y.
Right.
X and a Y making it male, an X and an X being female. So the male can pass on things, female can pass on things.
Right.
I'd want to know what my chances are of passing something on to my child.
Okay.
So, like, if I have a disease that I know is a dominant trait, so there's dominant and recessive traits, alleles. It's like Gregor Mendel was a monk in the 1800s or so. He did research with pea pods, and he did yellow and green. Green is dominant, yellow is recessive. So he would breed a green pea pod with a yellow pea pod. Then he'd take 4 peas, 3 of which would be green, 1 would be yellow. It's because the yellow is recessive, so it has to have 2 recessive alleles, and all the other ones are either homozygous dominant, which means 1 dominant, or heterozygous, meaning 1 dominant and 1 recessive. The only way you could have a recessive trait being the one that everybody sees is to be homozygous recessive, which is a recessive trait and a recessive trait. So I'd want to know if my spouse has a recessive trait for a disease and I have a recessive. We have a 1 in 4 chance of giving birth to a child that's going to have this disease.
But you also have a 75% chance of not having a child.
Well, that's the point. Is you want
not
to
having that.
Is that 75% chance worth it to you?
Right.
Or if you know that you have a disease, there's a chance that you'll give that to your child.
If you had a disease and you figured it out and you had a, let's say, 10% chance, do you think you'd have a child? And I'm not going to say like a disease that's fixable. I mean, this is affecting your child.
It depends on the disease. Like if I was colorblind, I'd have a kid.
No, not. I'm saying like nothing that simple. It's
well,
gotta
like
be like an
colorblindness
effective
will
disease.
negatively affect their life. Like my bio professor, he's colorblind, and he was talking about how traffic lights, usually they're fine because they're vertical. So he knows like in which order is stop, go.
Yeah.
He says every once in a while, they have those ones that are flipped on their side, and he doesn't know if goes to the left, goes to the right, anything. So
Well,
he just has to follow the traffic.
Is it not just brought up from the bottom up left?
Do you know that?
Pretty sure it's that way.
I don't
Usually
know.
red's on the right
I
side.
have no clue.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. Well,
He
you don't
said
see
that-
those too often. That's
No.
like a European thing.
I guess. They have it a little bit down south in the United States.
Okay, I was going to say like down South Michigan. I don't remember
No,
ever
no.
going through that.
But then he was saying what our government does is in the green light, they put a little bit of blue, and in the red light, they put a little bit of orange.
Oh, okay.
That way, colorblind people can still see it. Because, like, if you look what a colorblind person can see, there's, like, 3 arcs that kind of intersect at the bases. And it's at those intersection points that they can't tell the difference between colors.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, those glasses that are supposed to cure color blindness while you have them on, they block out wavelengths of the intersection points.
You should get him those as a present. Christmas is coming up, everybody.
Yeah,
Get your family and friends or professors glasses that fix their color blindness.
I'm pretty sure the glasses are fairly expensive. I'm one of like 150 students in this class. I don't have this kind of relationship with him where I'm going to drop this kind of cash.
I think they're like $400 a piece, in all honesty.
He can get them if he wants them.
Crazy.
I'm not going to get them for my professor.
That makes sense. So if I was to look at this, what I would be looking for is the, I don't remember exactly the 2 genes that need to match up, but the 2 genes that need to match up from a mother and a father to get ALS.
Yep.
That is what I'd be looking for, because that is the disease that scares me the most to this day.
See, ALS doesn't scare me nearly as much as like Alzheimer's, because it's a motor function disorder.
Yeah, I know.
Like Huntington's disease, where it's like it was originally Huntington's chorea. Chorea, you'll notice, sounds like choreography.
Or like the country.
It's because you move. You don't have control of that. So to me, like Alzheimer's, your brain breaks down. Where those kind of things, it's your body.
That is an extremely scary thing to think about. But when I think about that, I only think of older people having it. So me being in my young state, I'm going to live forever no matter what. I mean, I know I'm not going to, but being as a young lad, there's some natural way of thinking that you don't think it's going to ever happen to you. And whenever I associate Alzheimer's, it comes with becoming old. So I think that's in the future, far away. ALS gets to me because you're trapped in your own body.
Yep.
You can still think like you normally would, but you have almost no motor skills whatsoever.
Yeah.
That gets me going. I don't like that whatsoever. It's scary. I have woken up in a panic thinking that it's happening.
Wake up from a fever dream.
Well, not quite a fever dream. I had a fever dream, by the way, last night. I'm still trying to figure it out, right?
Okay.
If I was to have Alzheimer's, I guess you don't notice it happening to yourself. So it's a tragedy, not only to yourself because you'll never realize it, but to everybody else around you.
Yeah.
But if you have ALS, it's a tragedy to everybody else around you because at that point, I would feel like a burden. Then it's a tragedy to yourself because you're going to remember everything that's happening, your past experiences, how it was before then. Now you're remembering how I'm in this wheelchair all the time. I can't do what I always wanted to do. I can't play video games. I can't do all these things. And that is a scary thought.
See, to me, my brain is more important to me than the rest of my body parts. Because to me, my brain is what is me.
Yeah.
So like at a point, my brain would be so broken down, I'd be essentially dead.
Yeah. But if you didn't have your body, right, you'd still technically be you. But would it be
That's
you
true.
that you want to be living in?
Look at the guy who's doing a full body transplant.
Yes.
Quick question.
When does that happen, by the way?
It's the end of 2017.
Yes.
We'll probably talk about it when it happens.
We will. I'm so excited for that.
But question.
Yeah.
Is it a body transplant or a head transplant?
As far as I read or heard about, I've always heard head transplant because it's moving from one head to another. But then again, it
makes more sense to have a body transplant because, like, if you get a heart transplant, that's just a new heart onto you. So, to me, your brain is receiving a new body. So to me, it's a body transplant.
You can look at it from both ways, and I think you'd be correct.
I don't know.
Well, what would say having a body transplant or a head transplant is wrong? What would make it wrong?
A body is getting a head, but a body is just a lump of biomass, where a head has consciousness.
Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah, you're probably right. Because if you think about it that way, it is whenever, like you said, heart transplant, it's your brain brain's body receiving something new. And you're right, the body could not live without the head.
Yeah.
And so it's
the head also couldn't live without the body.
Well.
Well,
Yeah, you're
well,
right.
because your heart pumps
Yeah,
blood
I know.
to your brain, and then your brain says, keep pumping, so
But
the heart
it-
keeps pumping.
But if we get a device to keep it circulating, then in theory,
That's like being
good.
put on a bypass.
Yeah.
Something pumps for you, and then your heart doesn't have to.
Well, speaking about bypass,
Okay?
if you were on that,
Yeah.
let's say, and your family had the choice to pull the plug,
Mm-hmm.
or would you want them to do that? Well, let's start with this. After 1 week, they say it. After 2 weeks, and then after 2.5 weeks.
Okay, see, here's the thing. So there's people that are put on bypass, so their organs are still functioning,
Mm-hmm.
but their brain is gone.
Right.
That point, I'm gone.
Mm-hmm.
Unplug it.
Okay.
If my brain still has function, don't unplug it.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to be cryogenically frozen.
Really?
Yeah, I
Like,
think that would be so
ev-
cool.
If you were in that coma state where it was pumping you to keep you alive, or is
Mhm.
it at any time, like right before I'm gonna die, I want someone to cryo freeze me?
Oh,
real
I
quick.
would want to be cryogenically frozen. Like, if there was any chance that in the next, 1,000 years I could possibly cured of this disease,
Mhm.
freeze me, dude.
I don't know how I feel about cryogenic
Would
freezing.
you want to live forever?
No.
No.
No way.
Why not?
I value human relationship,
Yeah.
and I could not live a life where I'm constantly alone.
You're finding new people.
And then you lose them ultimately. You will always lose these people. Everything is nothing is permanent. Everything is fleeting,
That's the same way it is
so
now.
to speak. But I couldn't watch so many people I love die, and I keep staying alive.
Mhm.
I'm sure eventually, as things happen, I would get used to it.
Yeah.
You get used to anything at one point.
Mhm.
And I would get used to the fact that, these people, they're expendable. No matter what, they'll die. I won't. That's how life is.
Mhm.
I don't know if I'd like that, though. Because after so many hundreds of years, you can only experience so much.
Yeah.
Would it be worth it to live after that?
Mhm.
What about you? Would you want to live forever?
There's an issue that comes up with living forever. Your body begins to break down over time.
Mm-hmm.
So, eventually you'll have wounds
That
that
can't be
won't
healed.
heal completely.
Right.
I think Kurzgesagt, in a nutshell, did a video about this. And they were talking about how, you might be alive, but eventually you might have to get an arm amputated. So now you no longer have this arm for the rest of eternity.
Right.
Maybe you have to get your other arm. And eventually you're just
Mm-hmm.
you're just never going to die, but you might lose every part of your body.
Right.
It might all break down. You could be in constant pain because it's not painless. You're just still alive.
Mm-hmm.
If I could live in perfect health forever, at this moment in time, I would say yes.
Okay.
A solution to the problem of your body breaking down over time, robotic replacements
All right.
to your body. Let's say you had to get your arm amputated,
Mm-hmm.
but they're able to give you a new arm that will work exactly the way that your old arm used to.
Like a Star Wars thing.
Yeah, essentially. So they put a new arm on, and it works just the same, right?
Yeah. I could get down with that, but if we're going off of this, that means at some point
Mm-hmm.
you would have to replace your whole entire body.
Yeah.
You would essentially be taking your consciousness or your brain,
Mhm.
whatever, and putting it into a robotic body.
Yeah.
Is that feasible to the are you really transferring yourself over, or are you transferring
I
a
think as
copy
long as
of
your consciousness is continuous,
Mm-hmm.
it's still you.
Mm-hmm.
The issue is guaranteeing that your consciousness continues.
Right.
A thing that I like, CGP Grey did it in one of his Q&A videos. Someone asked him in which order would he replace his body parts to be robotic. He said he'd start with his brain. That way he could make better decisions on what parts of his body he would replace next.
What
But,
a cop out. What a guy.
Every night when you go to sleep, I'm pretty sure we've talked about this before. It was in the second episode or so.
I'm sure we've mentioned this probably every episode, in all honesty.
Maybe, but when you go to sleep, you can't know the next morning you're going to wake up.
Yeah.
So it's
But
for all you know, you die in your sleep
Mhm.
every night. But a new consciousness takes a new path, and that's what you're experiencing. Maybe right now you're living in a universe where every day up until today you've survived, but tonight you'll die.
Right.
And then there's another universe where you live one more day,
Mm-hmm.
and you can't know.
No, you
Some
can't.
nights I sit there not sleeping because I'm like, What if my consciousness doesn't continue past this point?
This is the night.
Yeah.
I can feel it. I've never experienced that problem
I have.
because
Because you're not a crazy person.
Well, yeah.
A little bit.
There's so many times that we always wake up
Mm-hmm.
that in my young state, I'm going back to being a young lad again,
Mm-hmm.
I never have the fear of going to sleep and never waking up again. And if I was older, even if I was in like my 50s,
Yeah.
I would start feeling it at that point
Uh-huh.
because I would know my age is getting to that point where people die,
Yeah.
so I could fall asleep and wake up.
Mhm.
I mean, sure, with that probability, I think throughout your whole life, you have almost the same chance. I
Yeah.
mean, sure, it gets lower and lower as you progress throughout life, but it's almost the same chance throughout, like maybe like 10 to 20 is about the same chance. 20 to 30, it's a little bit lower. 30 to 40, a little bit lower,
Yeah.
so on and so forth. But at that time, I would feel
Yeah.
this is the time that I
well,
could
like
actually
right
die.
now, some part of your body could throw a clot and you could die.
That is
Just
true.
sitting in this chair right
That
here.
is true. That's why you got to
You
get
could
up
just
and
have a
stretch.
brain aneurysm that you don't even know about right
Mhm.
now.
That is true. That always scares me. I'll die. That's it.
Yeah.
Whatever. I'm
Mhm.
dead at that point. But how's everybody else gonna have to react after that? That reminds me of SIDS,
Okay.
sudden infant death syndrome.
All right.
Babies have this at times.
Okay.
They just die.
Yeah.
That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly.
Yeah.
Nobody knows why. They're
Okay.
just dead out of nowhere.
That's awful.
It's terrible. There was a woman that my Nona, who she knew, ran a daycare for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Some kid had SIDS while she was there,
Wow.
like out of nowhere. Put like 5 or 6 kids down for a nap. 4 kids wake up.
Wow.
It destroyed her business, destroyed her life, and that scares me because if I have a kid, I know that I could put them down to bed one day and then they will never wake up.
I had no clue this was even a thing.
SIDS is crazy
And
scary.
Is there like research behind this?
Of course, there's research behind it, but as far as I know, they just don't know why it happens.
Wow.
There's ways to prevent it and whatnot, but it can just happen.
What are the ways to prevent it?
Let's look at them. Take these with a grain of salt too, because I don't
Yeah.
know much research, but they say things like putting a sleeping baby on his back. Firm bedding, no soft toys, don't smoke around the baby. That
Yeah.
seems like it's pretty obvious, but some people need to know
Mhm.
that. Keeping your sleeping baby close, not in your bed. I don't know why not in your bed.
Because you can smother it.
I guess. Breastfeeding as long as you can. Immunizing the baby. Consider a pacifier. Using a pacifier to put the baby to sleep. So, this seems like just normal baby things.
Yeah, it seems like just keeping your baby in good
just
health.
try to keep your baby in good health, or it could just die.
Yeah, that's
And-
crazy.
And here's the thing. You could do all these things, and it can still happen.
I wonder if this happens in other animals, because
Mm-hmm.
humans are born prematurely
Really?
compared to
What?
all other animals.
What?
Yeah.
How?
So
we always come out, we're like, 9 months, perfect, look at it, 36 pounds,
Well, look-
beautiful.
36-pound baby. Wow. That'd be a large kid.
But go
I think the biggest kid ever born was like 22 pounds.
Oh.
And it was ridiculous. But so our heads as humans when we're born are so freaking big that we have to get born earlier
Mm-hmm.
because otherwise we wouldn't be able to like
So if they
fit out.
So a baby should be kept in there longer. I guess should be cooking a
It's
little
like-
bit longer.
It shouldn't be because if we were, our heads would expand too much and we wouldn't be able to get born.
Right.
So other animals don't have this problem, so they'll stay in development for longer.
I mean, at this point, could you fix that with just C-sections?
I don't know. I haven't really looked into that
Mhm.
because not every person who has a child can have a C-section either.
Right. What would stop you from having a C-section? Do you know?
Certain clotting disorders and things, you couldn't really have any surgeries done
Yeah.
because your blood would just keep going.
Right. Weird how the body's like that.
Mm-hmm.
It can be so evolutionarily perfect
Yeah.
and then just destroy itself.
Yeah.
Out of nowhere, really.
There's tiny things that can go wrong and you're just done. Like we talked about with cancer, how there's like 2 mutations that have to occur and then you have cancer.
Right. And
The odds of both of those happening increase over your lifetime, but it's like it's not a huge chance most of the time.
Mhm.
But it's like just something so small can have such a radical effect on your life.
Really?
No,
I
I
have
am
that.
perfectly fine
I have that at times.
being crazy.
I have that at times where I have to have somebody sort of acknowledge that what I'm saying, even if they just acknowledge it to an extent, or I feel like I'm going crazy, and I don't know why.
See, I never really have to have confirmation of another person's opinion. It's like, you know this from when we were in high school.
What?
And I'd be working on a project.
Together?
Yeah. And I'd be working on a project of my own, not even for school. But I was in a class sitting next to you, typing away, I was usually writing a computer code. And I'd get stuck at a point. So I'd look at you, and I'd just start explaining it to you. You had no clue what I was talking about. You haven't taken any computer science at that point.
I would just say, yep,
But
maybe it's this. I didn't know what I was talking about. Yep.
But
and then Joe would figure it out somehow, some way, through persistence and just pure will of nature.
It was because I was telling you. So I have to hear myself say it, so I know in my own head if it's crazy or not.
I experienced that when it was coming to learning Python, where I would sit at my computer for the whole class, hating it because I didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
And then I would like talk to myself, and as I was walking out, as I do when I'm walking down Macomb campus, and people give me looks, but I'm doing it, and I explain it out loud, and I'm like, oh. That's how it's done.
Yeah.
Perfect. And then I go and I sit down and totally forget everything I just said. Doesn't even matter anymore. Ever get those feelings?
Yeah.
Hate them. Absolutely terrible.
One of the nerdiest things, I guess, that I've ever done, I wrote a program that compared every single possible statistic in Mario Kart.
I remember this, yeah.
To all the other ones. So you could choose each item versus every other item with every character and every possible combination, and it would compare what the best everything is. So while I was writing this, what I would do late at night was I have a density block set. So I have a bunch of blocks that all weigh the same amount, but they're made of different materials.
Right.
And some of the smaller ones are very similar size. So what I would do is I would lay down on the ground, take 2 of these blocks, set them on my forehead, and I would try to figure out which block is which based on the tiny variance in size and how much they conducted heat away from my skin while talking out loud to myself and trying to talk myself through the code that I was writing.
What did nobody caught you doing this, right?
I don't know. What do you mean? They caught me.
That's crazy. If I had a child and I saw that, I'd first of all, I wouldn't say anything. I'd walk in, look at them, turn around, leave, and I would look at them different forever. Hey, how you doing today, Antonio? I don't know. I just saw my kid laying on the ground with rocks on his head, talking out loud to himself. What's going on?
They're not rocks. It's like one's aluminum, one's like brass, and just like things like that. I put them on my head, and I try to figure things out. And it's just like gets my brain really focused.
I get that. That's super. Wow, I didn't know you did that. That's kind of funny. There's nothing wrong with it. I get why you would do it. It makes a lot of sense, actually. If it gets your brain going, good. That's great. But walking into that,
I understand how people would react like poorly to that, but
poorly. I think it'd be comedy gold.
I guess. But I got the idea. There was before the Brain Candy tour, there was a video showing my desk to Michael Stevens. It was a Vsauce video. And he just walked through, and he was talking about how he had a density block set, and he would try this thing. And as you know, I think Michael Stevens, I really admire the work he does. So I kind of like, I'm going to try this because I think he's a cool person. I think he does like interesting things. Figured I'd give it a run.
Right.
And he didn't use it exactly like I did, where he used it to like focus his brain. But when I do it, definitely is helpful.
Yeah. To each their own, in all honesty, with that. If you find some crazy way, either, I don't know, you put rocks on your head and you figure out what's going on in your life, or maybe you sit there looking at sticks, twiddling them around, and you're like, oh, now I get it. I mean, both of those things look crazy, don't get me wrong, but if they help you out, that's great. Now, I was on Reddit recently, and I don't remember the exact question, but it was, what is some fact of human life or human biology that makes you very sad? and I wanted to ask you about it. I haven't answered myself, but I wanted to see if you had anything that comes to mind real quick.
You're going to have to go first.
Okay. This one makes me sad.
Okay.
Personally, I know I will never be able to be as smart or comprehend things as much as other people can.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying I'm dumb.
Yeah.
I'm not a dumb kid. I know my stuff most of the time. But I know that my brain is limited to an extent where some people will be able to understand things and concepts so well and be able to explain them in great detail and so amazingly. I will never be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes me extremely sad.
Okay.
That's just one of the things that always gets to me. I don't know why, but it just does.
Yeah, I kind of understand that point of view where you just know that there's always going to be people above you.
Yeah.
And no matter what you do, you can't reach that point.
Mm-hmm. It's like I look up to them too.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to be like these people. And I know, hey, I could never be like them. I know you shouldn't always strive to be like one. Be yourself,
Mm-hmm.
be that kind of thing. But when you look at yourself in a higher way and you know you can never achieve that through limitations past yourself that you can't fix.
Yeah, it's beyond your control.
Yeah, it just that fact alone. Some people will be like, "Oh, it's beyond your control. You shouldn't worry about it."
Mm-hmm.
Still gonna be sad about it though.
To me, I guess things like that aren't what like get to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's not my own biology. I guess to some extent my own mortality,
Mm-hmm.
because that's like an inevitability. But things that scare me usually exist on a more cosmic scale. Like we were talking about how we'll only ever be able to get so far
Mm-hmm.
as a civilization. And there's so much to do right here, but we'll never be able to get that far.
If I knew there was so much more out there that would benefit us, I think that would make me more upset.
Mm-hmm.
But since I know we will probably, most likely, 99%
Mm-hmm.
never leave our solar system, I'm curious to how much is in our solar system at the moment that would extremely benefit us. Maybe by gaining...
We don't know.
Right.
That's the whole thing, is we will never know
Mm-hmm.
what's out there because we can't reach it.
What do you think about mining asteroids? What do you think we could find on there? Because I remember hearing about this recently, and I thought, hey, maybe Joe's going to have an idea about this.
I think that mining asteroids, one, is super cool.
It's like, that's sci-fi to the next level.
Yeah.
That's one of the coolest things in the world.
But they hold a lot of resources and things.
Mm-hmm. Such as, do you know? Do we know?
Well, they're
what we
largely
have?
iron
Okay.
most of the time, from my understanding. But they hold a lot of things. Like a blacksmith on YouTube, Alex Steele, he tried to forge an asteroid knowing it was made of iron and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But there's so many other materials inside of there that it couldn't be done. But I just think it's interesting. There's a lot of minerals inside asteroids,
Mm-hmm.
and that could help us here on Earth.
Do we know if Mars is a mineral-rich environment?
It's red because of iron.
It is?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't know that, actually.
Yeah, it's rust.
Because what I always thought is we do have to leave this planet
Mhm.
eventually. We have to go somewhere.
Yeah.
Or move people somewhere. We
Mhm.
cannot all stay here. And what, by 2020, there's going to be 10 billion people, I think?
Yeah.
Something like that. It's not sustainable. So if we go to these, like Mars, which I think is a dead planet, right? Essentially.
Yeah, a while back they thought that they found liquid water. Recent research suggests it was
Yeah.
sand.
Yeah.
But there's been a lot of reports of liquid water on Mars over time.
Mhm. If we went there, would it just be to move people, or could we actually find things there that could benefit not only us living there on Mars, but also maybe things that we could bring back and help us out?
If there was ice on Mars, like maybe under the surface or maybe at the poles of the planet,
Mhm.
we could harvest that, use that on Mars. And I think that there might be things on Mars that would be useful to bring back to Earth.
Right.
The issue I have with this, though, is if we're taking things from Mars to benefit us, we don't know a lot about Mars.
Right.
And we're saying it's okay to take apart this other planet to benefit our own.
Yeah.
Realistically, we couldn't take Mars like down to nothing because each planet in our solar system is pulling on all the other planets.
Mm-hmm.
So things would get unstable. I don't know that we would like fall out of orbit and just go off into space.
Probably not quite like that, but I think it could drastically change our orbit around the sun.
It could,
That's
yeah.
changing how our weather works and things such as that.
Yeah.
something. Speaking of Mars,
Okay.
you know what I find super interesting?
What do you
now
find
that we're
super
on this?
interesting?
Elon Musk.
Okay,
and his
yeah.
whole SpaceX thing and why everything is towards SpaceX. How he does not want investors in SpaceX whatsoever. It's not a public company. It's worth tens of billions. I think
If it was a public company, then he couldn't do what he wanted.
Right.
He had to do what his investors
it's
want.
all he wants to do. So what does he do to get money? To race for SpaceX. Well, he makes things like Tesla.
Yeah.
He's gonna do his plan to put satellites into the sky, make a cheap internet for as many people as he possibly can. He does. Tesla. There's one more, right? Oh, there's the boring company he wants to do for boring underneath the ground and
was
putting
him.
trains. PayPal, and all of this is going towards SpaceX. You make a higher-end Tesla to make a medium-end Tesla, to make a low-end Tesla, to make money.
Low-end Tesla is a relative term.
I know. But to make money, to go to SpaceX.
Yeah.
He wants to get there so badly. And I absolutely love
Yeah.
that is a thing, that he is going to do whatever he needs to do, make whatever he needs to make, not only to further humans, but to get to Mars.
Yeah. I think Elon Musk is just like an interesting person in general. There's a flow chart online of his life somewhere that someone posted on Reddit. And if you look at it, at some point in his career, he just went to Russia, bought used rocket parts, and started building his own rockets. That's crazy. Nobody does that, but he does.
So as I was in my high school days, we had to do debate at one point for debate class.
Yeah.
Who would have thought? And the basis of the debate was there were 3 groups or 3 people, depending on who it was. I was by myself. And each person got a person to defend. And the basis is you're on a hot air balloon. That thing's going down.
Yeah.
Either all of you die or 1 or 2 of you die and 1 stays alive. And one of the things one of the girls brought up as to why Elon Musk should be killed, that's who I had.
So you were saying that you wanted to keep Elon Musk
should
alive.
die. It should be alive.
Yeah.
And then the other people that should not, that should be thrown off are Lin-Manuel Miranda, the writer of Hamilton and other plays, and Eddie Van Halen.
Okay.
Who do you think chose Eddie Van Halen?
Scott.
Yep.
Our other high school friend.
These girls who had Lin-Manuel Miranda argued that he was not a good person because they claimed that in college he opened up sort of like a makeshift strip club, makeshift club, to pay for college that kids would go to, and they found that kind of like bad, horrible in a sense. And when I got up there, I was like, all right, let's talk about the strip club thing. That's like the most American thing you can do, to just make a business to pay for college and for it to be successful.
Yeah.
I don't know how true that is, because in my research, that was like kind of a debate of if it actually happened. But that's just, he has such a drive to do anything he wants, then nothing stops him. It's so admirable.
Yeah.
And I absolutely love the man.
Yeah, he's a crazy person, but he gets things done.
Now, speaking of crazy people and getting things done, this has been a very fast-paced episode, if you think about it.
Yeah,
We've gone from one topic to another. It's kind of fun.
We might have to end up transitioning between segments more than we normally do. A little bit of transition music. Speaking of which, this episode is going to be the first episode with our new music.
Yes, this is the new music written by our own Joe Young.
Oh man, me in GarageBand on my free time.
It's crazy. He's a musical genius.
Not really.
So I was watching something recently, and it pertained to being a dick.
Okay, I'm pretty sure I know. Did you get brought to this by like a Casey Neistat?
Of course. It's called
I know
Dicks.
what you're talking about.
And it brought up the idea that you have to be a dick to get things done.
Yep.
And it pertained to being a director, but it's more interesting, in my opinion, to think about it on a grander scale, whether it be running a business, directing a movie, or just running a group of people.
Yeah.
Do you think you have to be a dick to get things done?
Yes.
Yes?
Completely.
How so?
So I don't think you have to be mean to people, but you have to be willing to be like, you're an idiot. You're not going to work here anymore.
Right.
Because like if they're not helping you, they're hurting you. From a business perspective.
From when I always saw it, I used to get mad at people when that kind of thing would happen.
Yeah.
They'd basically tell me what to do, or be in a group, or I would be a leader, and I wouldn't lead as well as I possibly could. And I would think, if I was one being led, this person's a
Yeah.
Why are they saying these things? But then you got to think about it. Like my boss. Let's say I'm standing around at work.
Yeah.
And he yells at me to do something.
Yeah.
I used to get mad at that. And now I think, this man is paying me to do work. This is his business.
Yeah.
He's doing the right thing. He's not being a dick. I'm being a dick, in a sense, by wasting his time and money.
There's going to be so many bleeps.
Well,
I think the title of the movie we can leave in, but everything else is going to have to get bleeped.
I don't.
Definitely. We're going to have to put an explicit tag on iTunes. Then we become an explicit podcast.
I don't think so.
I do. I think we're going to have to bleep a lot of that. You sound like a baby whale.
No. I think it's fine. That's not a bad word. It's not a terrible bad word.
I think that the number of times we said it.
It was like 3 or 4 times.
I think we're going to have to bleep
fine.
it. No.
We'll discuss this later.
Okay.
But especially in times when you have to innovate or you're going into a new company. They've claimed that Elon Musk is notorious for being like that. Steve Jobs, a big person like that, but they're innovating. They're pushing people forward.
Yeah.
In a sense, if you think about it, these companies do so well, like with Apple, because Steve Jobs always pushed these people to their limits. He didn't let anybody rest. Sure, you could say, oh, he's being a bad boss because he's not letting his company rest and whatnot. He's being mean to these people. But because of this persistence of making people go forward and pushing them, we have this company that's not as great as it was before, but has put out so many great products and innovations. I put in quotes, I guess. And so you kind of need to be. You don't need to be mean, but you need to be strong about things. Yeah. You need to put your foot down, that kind of stuff.
With the Apple II, when it came out, it had an issue with overheating and these kinds of issues. So they wanted to put vents on it. And they're like, yo, Steve, look it. We finished the computer. And he looks at it and he goes, that looks stupid. Get rid of the vents. So in the owner's manual for the Apple II, you would pick it up 2 inches and drop it because things would become unsoldered from the overheating. And it's like, or when they were making the original iPod, and they're like, we finished it. And he goes, make it smaller. And he just kept telling them, make it smaller. Make it. And they're like, we can't make it smaller. And he goes, make it smaller. And it's just, they ended up making it smaller.
From what I remember him telling them to make it smaller and smaller. I don't know about this next part, how true it is.
Yeah.
But I love the thought of it.
Yeah.
What he did is that they gave him the iPod. And they're in a meeting. Glass jug of water for anybody who wants it. They keep saying, Steve, we can't make it smaller. He takes the iPod, drops it into the water. You see bubbles come up. He said, there's still air in there.
Yeah.
You can make it smaller. I so wish that happened.
I don't know if that's true or not, but
I know, it's so mean, but it's so cool.
Yeah.
That is a cool guy moment right there. I love that.
But I do think that sometimes it's necessary to be like, I don't care if someone thinks that I'm being a jerk, as long as the end product is as good as it can possibly be.
Right.
And sometimes you need to be a dick to get to that point.
Hey, Joe.
Hey.
You want to ask Reddit?
Sure. Thank you.
You're welcome.
What's the dumbest question someone's ever asked you?
The dumbest question?
Yeah.
There's so many dumb questions. Oh, when they asked about the difference between a complex and a compound sentence.
What's the difference between a complex and a compound
complex, I would think about it like this. Well, you remember fanboys? For and, nor, but, or, yet, so.
Yeah.
If it has that in it, and it's combining 2 sentences, compound sentence. If it's a sentence with a little bit extra, it's a complex sentence.
Okay. I had no clue. I feel like that's not a dumb question.
That's a dumb question. It's complex or compound. There's a huge difference behind it. It's so easy to figure out what the difference is too.
All right, boy, who's going to become an English teacher?
But I mean, think about it. Even the name itself is like, oh, complex sentence. It's 2 sentences together. No, what's the next thing next to it? That says compound sentence. Well, compound, when you're compounding 2 things, you're putting 2 things together. So you're putting 2 sentences together. That's dumb.
But when things are complex, they have a bunch of smaller parts that make them up.
Exactly.
Compound
about
also
that.
means it has smaller
Putting
parts that
two
makes it up.
parts together. I think it's a dumb question. I hate it.
Okay. Dumbest question someone ever asked me. Do coconuts have real milk in them?
Who asked you that?
High school.
High school? Okay.
Yeah.
Do people actually think there's, I guess so,
Yeah.
have milk in there?
And then I looked at her. Well, okay, so she asked our teacher this. I began maniacally laughing from the other corner of the room. She turned around and goes, "Do you think I'm dumb?" I said, "I think that was a dumb question." And then you know what happened?
What?
Our teacher had to Google the answer. There's not real milk in coconuts.
It's water.
Coconuts aren't mammals.
Yeah.
They can't produce milk.
Isn't it just trapped water?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. What's your opinion on people watching?
People watching?
Yeah.
Love people watching.
So
Sounds creepy.
amazing.
What I do when I'm at school and I go to the cafeteria, I always sit facing a window. That way I can look in the reflection of the window and see what's going on behind me. And I don't look like a creep just sitting there looking at people.
Yeah, no, you look like a creep just staring out the window.
Yeah, but I'd rather look like I'm looking out a window than staring at random people. I think it's so interesting. And you learn a lot about people.
A fun thing to do is not only watch them, like look at them,
Yeah.
but to listen into their conversations.
That-
Then you can make a whole story about
I
them.
don't really do that. But like, I don't know. I always just try to like figure out someone, like something about someone. Like, I was walking the other day and there was a girl in front of me. And so she was dressed fairly nice. She had like a nice pair of shoes on. And then she had like a bag and these kinds of things. So I'm like, she seemed like someone who had a bit of money. But then as she walked, I realized where her shoes hit the back of her ankles. There was like a blister starting on her bag. It had like wear marks and things, which told me she may dress nice, but that doesn't mean she can afford a lot of nice things.
Right.
Just means that maybe she has a few. So just things like this, I try to like learn about people by watching them.
Most of life,
Yeah.
most of the time, I don't think you need to dress quite nicely.
No.
Just having a few nice things to wear every once in a
Yeah.
while, I think that's perfect.
Yeah.
That's absolutely what I do. Most of the time, it's jeans and a t-shirt, baby. Maybe a flannel if I'm feeling real good today. You know what I'm still upset about while we're here? The fact that Whiplash didn't get Movie of the Year, and Birdman did. Birdman was a great movie, but I think it won because it was so artsy.
I really like artsy movies.
They're great. Don't get me wrong.
Whiplash was also a very well-made movie. I never saw Birdman.
You'd like it.
I heard about it, but I really liked Whiplash.
You'd really like Birdman.
Okay.
Give it a watch.
I will.
do think you would like it. It's so good. It's really cool because it's meant. I'll just say this: it's all done in one shot, or made to look like it's done in one shot, because the whole premise is he's in a play, so they just wanted to make it look like that. But the ideas it goes into are just super interesting.
Which movie do you think most encompasses the human condition?
Do you have an answer for this?
Pirates of the Caribbean. No.
Obviously, greatest movie of all time.
Just something that says a lot about people.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, yes. The movie Her.
I knew it.
I think that's, yeah.
I need to watch that movie again. It was a long time ago since I watched it.
But I think it says a lot about how people view relationships outside of the norm.
Mm-hmm.
And just like how society could be going in general.
It's a good look into how society itself will change and what we'll have to sort of adapt to. There we go. But I need to ask you something about the ending.
Mm-hmm.
Spoiler alert for anyone who's listening.
Yeah.
Don't know if anybody is. And they haven't seen Her yet. Go watch the movie, then come back.
Yeah.
Pause it, go watch it, come back.
For the last like 5 minutes of the episode.
Yeah, why not? And so the operating systems just leave at the end.
Yeah.
I don't think that's feasible whatsoever. If you make an operating system, you're not just gonna make it so they can leave, or they're not just gonna leave. Oh, we're gonna go somewhere else at this point. It's essentially what they said. No, you're still code that can be brought up and manipulated and everything.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean just leave?
Yeah, like
I don't understand that.
An interesting thing about this, I'm gonna try to allude to our next episode, is talking about what you were talking about. Theoretical physicist. Ooh, man, am I going to slaughter his name?
You got it. I'm gonna try to do it. Michio Kaku.
Michio Kaku.
I think that's Michio Kaku. Because I don't think you pronounce Michio. Michio.
Whoever he is, he's a theoretical physicist, and he had a point at the end of a video on the YouTube channel Big Think about how, why not, when you're making a robot, can you just not put computer code into this robot that says, if you're going to kill someone, turn off?
That was my biggest thing, and people are like, oh, robots are going to take over and kill us all. They're code still. You just write it so they don't do that. Right?